He did. I got it.
Right here.
Yep, I got it.
Oh, you got it?
Yep.
You think it's gonna stay?
Yep, it'll stay. As long as I don't shake anything, it should stay. Okay, guys. We'll see if it stays. If it doesn't do good, then I'll have to. And since I'm doing this, I'm just going to do it this way. Okay. Dependent. Qualifying child, qualifying relative. All of you have probably heard or seen the word dependent. So that's what we're talking about. These are the choices of dependents. Okay? Some of this, like I said, is very general. So if you think you'll remember it, don't want to write it down, you don't have to. Dependent taxpayer test, person cannot claim a dependent if they can be claimed as a dependent by another person. That just means it has to be your dependent. Okay? A person filing a joint return in their spouse can claim a dependent by someone else, cannot claim dependents on their return. Okay? This just means if you're married, sometimes someone can claim you. So if you think about a situation like someone who's younger and got married at an early age, say they both had to move back in with mom and dad. Okay? That's who we're talking about. If your parents, say they're older, and they claim you as a married couple, you guys cannot then go claim other people if you're claimed as a dependent. And that's kind of a crazy situation, but believe it or not, we do see it. Let's see, joint return, you cannot claim a married person. If he or she files a joint return, that's kind of reiterating what I just said. Cannot be claimed as dependent unless that person is a U.S. citizen, U.S. resident, U.S. national, or a resident of Canada or Mexico for some part of here. Okay, guys. That last one is supposed to be concrete, okay? They have to have been here or in those countries for some part of the year. So we do run into that sometimes where people aren't sure. Don't panic. When you get into a tax return, there's a help button. So if you ever question it, you can just press help and it'll walk you through determining that, okay? And they also fill out contact information, so it's pretty cut and dry. Who is this person? How do they relate to you? So we don't usually have a lot of problems at this point with them on that situation there. Okay, 5 tests. So this should be on one of your cover sheets. Some of this is pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so I didn't print out a sheet. So if there's no sheet in there, you just know, hey, I can write notes out beside the bubbles, because not all 5 of these are going to have a page with it. Relationship. Okay, this is a child. So we're talking children. There's going to be different kind of language throughout of what's considered a child, but we literally mean a child. Okay? Age, residency, support, or a joint return. Okay? These 5 things are going to determine if this is your qualifying child. Okay? And then we're going to go through what all those are. Okay. Relationship test. Person must be a son, daughter, stepchild, foster child, descendant, half-sister, half-brother, stepsister, descendant. Okay? Has to be a child, not necessarily your biological child, but a child. Okay? Adopted child is always treated as your own child. Okay? Someone that's legally been placed with you. And adoptions, if anybody were to ever come in asking questions about that, that's one of those you're going to roll to somebody else. First year preps, they changed that credit so much that I've done 2 in 10 years, and they're a little bit of a booger. Foster child, we do see that every now and then as well. We have to have those documentations from the court that they're legally allowed to claim them. Okay? Any question on relationship? Right? I mean, like I said, most of the time, this is a pretty easy one to get. Age test. This is usually the one that's most confusing. Ron, let me get you some sheets, buddy. And feel free to grab some pizza, don't be shy. Here is this week's. Over here. There's that, and then this is that. Okay. And then this is last week's. Okay, so the age test, guys. Number 1, they must be under 19 at the end of the year. And younger than you. That's very important. And younger than you. Full-time student, under age 24, or permanently and totally disabled. And you sometimes when people come in, you have to kind of remember. I've had some that they've been 18, and then I had to be like, oh, they graduated high school this year. Okay, they're good. Because they'll say, oh, they're not in college. But then it's like, oh, but wait, were they in high school? Okay, we're good. That's kind of that weird, sometimes they graduate at 17, okay, type thing, or they graduate at 18, they're older, but they graduate. So you always want to be sure and ask and not just assume they're out of the house. It could be they're 18 and just graduating, okay. As far as some of the forms that go with dependents and the schooling and things of that nature, we'll look at some of those credits later. As far as what the dependent actually gets you per se, the monetary amount, this is more for just terms and definitions, okay? Permanently and totally disabled. Okay, so basically, if you think about this, these two are 19-24 as the age groups, right? Permanently and totally disabled means you can claim your qualifying child up until whenever, okay, as long as you're supporting them. So if you have a child that's your dependent and they're disabled, you can claim them for their lifetime, okay, if there's not an age restriction, okay? And there are some Arkansas disability credits, speaking of state, so just remember if anybody ever says, oh, my kid's disabled, it's not something the system automatically picks up on. Sometimes it does, but it used to be a little funkier and we would miss it sometimes, so. You're good? Okay. Okay. All right. Full-time student. So let's just kind of go over the definition of that full-time student, that one that has to be 24. Okay. Full-time student is a student who is enrolled for the number of hours or courses the school considers full-time. On the forms that need to be dated that, they put that on there, so you don't even have to worry about that. The school will determine that. Okay. Now, do we think that the parent's always going to know? No. So sometimes I have a lot of people that they'll say, man, I feel like I'm a detective. And I said, yes, you are. I said, that's half of what we do, is fill out paperwork and kind of get in those nooks and crannies we're not sure of, try to find people more credits. It's always finding more, right? Not less. And so that's part of what we do. We have to figure out, okay, they marked on this paper they're a student. We got to look at their age. We got to look at, all those things. A full-time student at the school that has a regular staff, course of study, enrolled student body, or a student taking a full-time on-forming course given by a school described in number 1, state, county government. Most of these guys now, legally, a couple of years ago, they have to issue a form to the student most of the time, 99% of the time. So that's how you do it. They're going to have that 1090, whatever it is. I can't even remember, 1098T, I think, for tuition. Yes, the school will issue that form. Now, what do you think? Do you think it always finds its way back to mom and dad so they can bring it in with a bow on it and we know what we're doing? No. So that's usually the first thing we ask if they come in. Oh, my child's a student. Oh, do you have that form? You have that so-and-so form? Because usually what happens is the schools now will create an account and post it to the account, and sometimes it's the student's account. So usually I'm like, oh, text your kiddo, or they may have it, or they've gotten it in their mailbox at school. So usually the students end up with that form that we need to complete the taxes, because there are certain credits that can go with that form, so it's always good to have. Not every time, sometimes if they didn't pay in a lot for tuition, they may not have a form, but it's always good to see it so we can put it in and determine. Because some people it's thousands of dollars they get back. So we want to make sure we have that.
Are we supposed to have that page?
No. Nope. Some of these you will not have, guys. You just basically it's just basically telling you what counts as being in school. So just know, sometimes online courses don't count. Most of the time we look at it as if they have that form. That's what counts, okay? Because even like hair schools will do that form, technical schools, mostly anything legitimate that you're going for a degree or a certification will have one of those if they've paid anything in for the tuition. We'll go over that credit later, but the main thing on that credit you want to understand, besides that tells us they're a student, and this is defining it, okay, vocational versus school, regular school. The main thing it has to be is they have to have paid something. If you got all grants to go to school, the government's not going to give your parents back a credit because they didn't pay for it yet. Okay, we're talking about you paid some of that schooling, as well as if grants covered most of it, but you just paid in a little bit, it may not give you a big credit back. So I always tell everybody, just throw it in. If they bring it in, if it's no extra time at all to throw it in just to be covered. Because you don't want to give somebody a wrong estimate if you looked at it wrong or something, I'm a believer in throw it in the system. It's not costing me much more money for the office. You're sitting there anyway. Get it in just for peace of mind. Okay? Permanently and totally disabled. Okay? He or she cannot engage in a substantial gainful activity. A doctor determines the condition has lasted or can expect to last for at least a year. Okay, are you always going to be able to tell when they're in the office if their child is disabled? If you do not ask them. No, they come in all the time with their kids. Well, if they're running around just playing, you don't know. It can be intellectual. Okay? Some of them, if their kids are a little older, 12, 13, they don't even come in with them. So we sure don't know if we don't even see them. So we have to ask, there are questions in the software, we have to ask those questions. Because if we ask the questions, the software will pull up those additional credits they may be eligible for. And there's a different way we do those credits. This year, I don't know exactly how the software will have us do them, but we'll definitely find out as we roll along. But very important not to miss this because it can help some people get extra credits, okay? Okay, Beth's son turned 19 on November 30th. He was not disabled or a full-time student. Does he meet the age test? No. Beth's son does not meet the age test because at the end of the year, he was not under age 19 because it's under, which basically means 18 or less, okay? Does that kind of make sense? Almost all the questions on the test will be like this, right? Over, under, might be, are. Those tricky questions. So the competency exam's a little wonky that way. It's very trick questionist. I don't like that. I'd rather be straightforward, but that's why we let you do open book, because it is very fact specific, okay? Residency, I think, is one of the easiest things in my opinion, but it's probably one of the most missed, okay? And one of the most manipulated things, and you'll know what I mean as we go through it. Residency, person must have lived with you for more than half of the year, okay? Exceptions apply for temporary absences, children who were born or died during the year, kidnapped children, children of divorce or separation. Person also, you get that exemption if you were temporarily absent due to illness, education, business, vacation, military. So the way I like, and also child who was born or died during the year is treated as being in the house. Okay? I just look at it as, okay, did you take care of the kiddo? Did you provide them support? You know, if there's other situations, that's fine. But that's the biggest thing you need to know. Okay? They're going to the military, they're going away to school. Well, we already covered that if they're in school, you can claim them. So this is just kind of reiterating, that's what it means by residency, okay? Now, if you had someone who lived with grandma for 3 months, but lived with you for 9 months, well, that person was with you 9 months, so you get to claim that child, right? If child was with grandma for 7 months and you 5 months, well, grandma was really supposed to claim the child, okay? So that's that kind of thing we're talking about residency. Now, a few years ago, I'm going to kind of talk about this, and you can write this down if you want to. We'll have a whole chapter about it. We should anyway. They haven't changed it on me. But for some of these qualifying things here, we sometimes ask them to bring in documents to prove it. Okay? Usually my protocol is if they're a first-year client and we don't know them, we have to have something. They can't just come in and say, well, I'm putting these 2 dependents on my client sheet. I'm supposed to claim them. Good deal. Let's go. No, we got to have something. Okay, and the IRS is very specific. They want you to have something with the addresses that match. So a health record, a school letter, a piece of mail that actually has made out to that child that's from that. Okay, a social security card, we can't tell that they're living with you. An ID card for health doesn't tell us they're actually living with you. It's at least something. So I would combine that with something else. We also do interview questions for this. Okay, on a lot of early returns, we'll do interview questions. So the IRS states that if you use something, you just have to document it in the software what you used, and if you just ask questions, to be as thorough as possible. Because, and I quote this, the interview and the questions you ask are just as important as the piece of paper or the document. Now, the caveat is, that's if the IRS audits us. If they audit the taxpayer, they don't care what note we wrote in the system. We cover ourselves by putting notes in the system. The taxpayer, however, if they get audited, they have to cough up this stuff. We can't just print out our little note, and that doesn't work. So you have to kind of say, okay, I'm putting this in the system, but just so you know, if you're ever audited, because the IRS does random audits every year, you would have to bring in some of this stuff. You would have to prove this. And I have seen people be lazy and not want to provide this and lose credits. The other thing that does is, how does that make us look if we said they could have that credit? So it's kind of a balance. It's almost like we do it at the front end, so we don't have to do more work on the back end. Yes, ma'am.
Like where they're registered for school?
Yep, paperwork from the school, absolutely. A certified note from the school that says this is their parent, they are registered at this address, absolutely. And what we will do sometimes, I don't know if it's going to be up to There you go. We're gonna have something new this year called a portal, where they're gonna be able to upload documents. That could possibly be another one of those they might be able to upload to us, is the residency things. Like if we started the return and they had to go off and go get these documents, we might have a place where they can upload the picture of the document. I know they're gonna be able to do W-2s, I just don't know technically how that's gonna work, but I'm sure it will upload anything that they're able to just shoot to us. So, and it'll save it in our software. They're gonna be able to create a username. That's new coming this year. Once we start a return, we'll be able to get, like anything else you do these days, you get your account, one more thing to have a username. But it will be good because then they don't have to come back into the office. They may not even have to fax it to us. They could just get the document, screenshot it with their phone, hit click, and it's in our little box. What I have found out about that is, so far they don't have worked in the system a notification to tell us something's there. So we would have to know, oh, that person's uploading something in their box. They'd have to tell us. Or we just have to know that's one of the ones we're following up on and we have to go check it. Doesn't that sound like fun? But it is going to be there. So it's something a little easier this year. They'll have a place they can upload it. But yes, the most common one is to go to the school and just be like, hey, I need a little letter. And they're so used to it now, they just pop it out. Super easy to do. So does that mean that every return that you start at that moment, you're going to be able to finish? No. You will put stuff. There was one year when they were doing some really crazy stuff with the IRS. We had like 50 returns on hold. I was like, okay, these people got to get this together. This is a lot of follow-up. Like, whoa, we gotta figure this out. Yes, I wore my crown today. Okay, qualifying child will be treated as a qualifying child or his or her non-custodial parent if all of the following apply. Parents are divorced or legally separated at all times during the last 6 months. So legally, if someone comes in, say a mom comes in and says, oh, my husband and I split up 3 months ago. Well, this says you have to be not together for the last 6 months for you to be able to claim that kid. That's the legality of it. So if someone's married and they're going through some hard times, and a mom or dad comes in and says, well, my kiddo was with me, I'm going to claim them. If they tell us that they lived with their partner those last 6 months, they're only supposed to file joint or separate. Not supposed to be head of household, which we'll get into in a minute. And so that's kind of the biggest thing we deal with, okay, is legal. And yet again, what do they have to do if the IRS audits them? They're the ones that have to prove it, okay? Child receive over half of his support from the parents. Child is in the custody of one or both for more than half the year. Decree of maintenance or written separation agreement applies that the non-custodial parent can claim the child. The custodial parent signs a written declaration. I wouldn't worry as much about the written declarations. I've maybe seen 1 or 2 in my whole experience, okay? That is just a technical IRS form that can be signed by the other parent to say, I'm letting you have that child this year. Don't see a lot of those because people don't even know it exists. And it's more difficult to get the other parent to do it versus us just asking them these questions and then proving it to us versus having the other parent sign off on it. Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, you were just thinking. Okay. Yeah, so we just don't see it a lot because a lot of people don't even know it exists. Okay? One thing I also will tell you, the IRS isn't really good about recognizing legal documents like this. So on the legal divorce decree, they really don't care. Like, they want to know who the kid was with, right? So, Avetta, if you had your kiddo, say you were divorced and you had your kiddo, but say in the divorce decree, so-and-so was supposed to claim the kiddo. Well, they don't really care what the divorce decree says. They just want to go by their rule, okay? So that's great. That helps you, but they will determine what meets this, okay? And so we have to look at it and determine, okay? Like I said, most 75–80% of returns, super simple. We can tell mom worked, she doesn't know where dad is, she's claiming the kiddo, or families together, they're filing joint, they've got dependents. It's usually cut and dry. Yes.
Maybe you said this, I missed it, you did. They have to have some kind of documentation of where they've been separated within 6 months.
Good question. So, basically, if they tell us and we put it in those interview questions, it's a legally binding document because they sign off on it, right? So they're responsible to prove that if the IRS asks. And that's what we have to make very clear. If we don't make them bring something in, okay? Because it's really hard to tell us when somebody lived in the house or not. unless you literally were just renting a house and you have a landlord statement saying Joe Schmo moved out in this month, it is almost kind of impossible to prove that, okay? But somebody that's wanting to counter-prove it could probably easily do it, right? If someone said, I was living in that house, I was paying for the house. Have that all the time. You know, oh, I went and got me an apartment down the road, but I was paying for that house they were living in. She didn't work. You know, so that, I mean, that's plausible, right? Do I have customers down to a T? Anyway, but that's plausible, and then you can see that on a test, right? That is coming up. I'm trying to see if it's on this one or another one where there's some circumstances, but we'll go over some questions in a minute too. That'll kind of make that a little clearer for you. Okay. Charles and Ellen are divorced. Ellen has custody. They both provide all the support. Ellen is giving Charles the exemption. What form must be attached to his return? Does anybody remember what it's called? 8332. Okay. Now, what I would say is if there's not a standing legal document like a divorce decree, somebody might want to do this to protect themselves. Okay? And likewise, if we do have someone come in that says, oh, you know, my wife is letting me claim our kiddo, we're separated or we're divorced, that situation, I might would ask for this or ask for the proof that we were talking about, right? Something that shows they were in the house, that sort of thing. This is really more for, because if you look, it says release of claim for the current year. This is more for a special situation, okay? My ex-husband doesn't normally claim Joseph, but for this year, I'm going to let him do it. I'm going to go ahead and fill out this form for him. Just so they know, and I know that I'm letting him do it, okay? Because what's going to happen if Mom Ellen forgets that she did this, you know, somebody's going to get kicked out. Okay, so it is good to have, it's more for reference for us to know he's telling the truth or she is telling the truth than it is anything else. So even if we don't even put it on the return, at least if we have a copy of it, it's in the system, okay? You won't see it hardly at all, but just so you know it's there. Support test. Well, we know what support is. We support them, right? So the basic thing is a child cannot have provided more than half of his own support. If you have somebody that meets the 19 or the 24 age thing or disabled, if he or she, as far as working wages, okay, provided more than half of his or her own support, you can't claim them. Now the caveat is if they are in school, we usually just mark that their income is below the threshold because they are in school. Okay, that's the only time we're like, no, they're in school, you really probably, you know, because most students that are in school don't work full-time. We do get the occasional student that works full-time in school, but 99% of them do not. 99% of them, mom and dad are paying for the house, mom and dad are paying for at least part of the car, you know, and that is one of those decisions we have to determine by the information we're getting. So it is always good as well, at this point, if you know there's dependents of working age on there, what do we want to do? What do we want to ask? W-2, were they working? Is there something else we have to file on them? Okay, because children have their own form. So if you're working age, 16 or above, and you have your own W-2, you're on your own separate tax return in the system. And so usually what we'll do, if they've called, if they're setting an appointment, or they come in, we'll give us that as well, and we'll start their packet too. It's a long-standing thing. Most tax places will do the dependents for free with their parents' paid return. And I say free. We keep that in mind when we're doing the parents' return. We don't want to give some big discount if we're doing 2 of them. So we just want to make sure we charge a good price for that if we're doing the kids for free. Likewise, if there was any weird stuff in the child's return, we might charge a little bit if they're, you know, if they're out of the norm for a child. Say they worked a side job and had a 1099, or like a sole proprietor started some sort of business. I mean, those types of things we may have to look at. But for the most part, if they've got a couple kiddos that each had a W-2 apiece, we do them on this. Okay. Any questions about providing the support? Let me see if they've got any other documents on here. Like I said, our old software was kind of weird about it. It made us mark some things in the system even when they were in school. So we would just put that they were under that income limit because it wouldn't give them the credit otherwise. It's kind of a weird weird thing about it. But this shows you support. We're talking medical, housing, school, transportation, clothing. Most of the time, that 24 and under group, if parents are claiming them, parents support them. So that we never have too much trouble with that one. Joint return test, the child cannot file that joint return we were talking about unless they don't have dependents, they're living with mom and dad is claiming both of them. And they were under that income limit, right? Okay, so if you have a young married couple or an old married couple that lost their house, say they weren't working, say they lost their job, they only had a little bit of unemployment, yet again it goes back to was someone else supporting them. If you were supporting the couple, you can claim them both on your return. Now, the caveat to that is they can still file a return to get back what they paid in, but they can't claim their own exemption because someone else paid for everything. Okay, and there are buttons we mark. Very, very important. There are buttons you will mark if you're taking all their exemptions or not, even with the student. Okay, are you claiming the exemption for this dependent? Okay, if you are not claiming the exemption, say you're just trying to get a credit or something of that nature, on the child's return, okay, if parent is claiming the child, remember I said if you have a W-2, say you're 16, worked at Pizza Hut, you have a little W-2, we have to mark on your return that someone else is claiming you. Because if we don't, you're going to get your own exemption, and when we put through mom and dad's, it's going to kick mom and dad's out because we put you're claiming yourself. That's basically what that means. Very important button, because if you do that, we have 2 amendments to do. And then basically we've done that for free and we've made no money. So, and that leads me to something else. Talking about dependents. What should you always do if you have somebody young who walks into your office and wants to file a return? Verify their age. What? Amount of income, okay.
Their parents, if they still live at home.
If they still live at home. Okay? Every year I have multiple people come in, kids come in. We can tell they're young, probably 17, 18, 19. They don't know. They're just, woo, I'm just coming in to get a good deal and I see you're giving a promotion of $50. Woohoo. You know, they'll come in and it's like, how old are you? And I do this before I even let them fill out a packet. If I think they're young enough, I don't want to waste 30 minutes and find out they call mom and dad and mom actually meant for them to go down the road to H&R Block. Like, I want to nip this in the bud now. How old are you? Now, did you go to school? Are you still living at home? You know, because you can find out pretty darn quick, right? Oh, no, I moved out. You know, okay, when did you move out? Are you living with a roommate? You know, do you have a significant other? Like all those questions. Because you don't want to get into the return and then realize we've wasted each other's time. As well as it could be that they moved out at 19, they're working full time, they didn't go to school, and we just misjudged it a little bit and we're going to go ahead and file the return. But it's much easier to see it then versus you get back there and you accidentally send it, and then mom calls an hour later and says, why did you send my child? Well, they were 18 and they can legally sign the paperwork and they told us that nobody was claiming them. So I haven't even gotten to the point where, as I'm asking those questions before I do anything, I've had them call mom right there. Can you call your mom and just be sure? Because we don't want to get into that. Because like I said, if their parents were filing somewhere else, it could be a big rigmarole to fix all that. It's not that it's not fixable, it's just amendments can take months and months and months. So you're talking about, if they could have got EIC or credits off that child, you're talking about thousands of dollars that they would have to wait months for. Doesn't make parents happy. So, and they don't realize, if you're 18 and up, you can sign the documents. That's a good 6 years in there that somebody could mess up on if we don't do what's called due diligence. That's what can happen. So, we do not want that to happen. Can someone give me a time check? What time is it? Okay, well, pretty good then. Even my mouse is kind of funky today.
Time's changing as we.
Yes, I'm so glad.
That's right.
Okay. Special test for qualifying child of more than one person. If a child meets the relationship age, residence support to be a qualifying child of more than one person, only one person can use this child. That's what that's saying. You can't be on 2 returns, guys. You can be on one. That should just be a given. This is talking about the tiebreaker rules. So what do you guys think? Because we've already talked about it. The biggest tiebreaker rule, you don't have to necessarily look at this. What's the biggest tiebreaker rule probably? What do you think?
Where the child most of the time
Mm-hmm.
lives the longest with
Who provided more for the child?
not necessarily provided more, but just the
Right.
time.
Residency is first.
Mhm.
If residency is the same, it's the higher AGI. The tiebreaker for any of them is parent. So say they live part of the year with a grandparent and part of the year with a parent. Parent always gets the tiebreaker. Okay? Really and honestly, guys, it doesn't happen that much. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Now, back in the day, these were the different credits that you could split between children. So, between parents, excuse me. So if you had a couple and they were divorced, okay, these would be the 5 that you could split. EIC, on the end down there, earned income credit, exclusion from income for dependent care, that's like daycare, okay, dependent care, we're talking about daycare, or care for an older elderly person, or a mentally disabled child, something of that nature. Credit for child dependent care expenses, same thing, head of household filing status, child tax credit, additional child tax credit, other dependent credit. Okay, they have updated this a little bit because the other dependent credit is a newer credit. Okay, I think it's like $500, but we didn't used to have an other dependent credit. You didn't used to get it. That was in the new tax law changes last year. But these are the 5 that we used to could split. Okay. Now you can still split these, but the dependent credit doesn't exist anymore. So it's not as juiced up as it used to be for split couples. Used to, you could get dependent exemption, additional child tax credit, and I think that was it. And then the other parent got head of household, daycare, and EIC. So really, you kind of got the ruse in the new tax laws is going to be someone that was just getting that dependent exemption. You don't get as much as you used to with that. Okay, that's really all you kind of need to know. We hardly ever have people that do that split. Usually somebody takes the kid or they don't. But just know that a split does exist if anybody talks about it and says, well, I think, we got the one kid old, but I think my ex-spouse was doing it where he gets some stuff and I get some, because that's how they explain it, right? Just know it does exist, and we'll look at it when we get the new software, because it's done a certain way in every kind of software. But usually the biggest thing is the filing status is what tells you what you get. Okay, and there is a spot actually on the 1040 that says it. You'll notice it when we start doing practice returns. It will say, put the name of this person here that you're using to qualify for your HOH, but you're not claiming them as a dependent. That's how you know they're doing the split. But like I said, it's super uncommon. I've seen it like twice in 10 years. People just don't even know it exists really. And it's more simpler to do it the other way. I cannot get this thing to just... Okay. We've talked about this. If only one of the person that wants to be the parent is, if only one of the persons is the child's parent, child is treated as qualifying child. We talked about that. Parents file a joint return together and claim the child is a qualifying child of the parents because they're doing a together return. If the parents do not file a joint return, but both parents claim the child, IRS will treat the child as whom the child lived for the longer period of time. We covered this. If the child lived with them same amount of time, goes to the higher AGI. Now the question is, how do we know what's going on with the other parent if we're only talking to one parent? You don't. That's exactly right, you don't. It's all honor system, guys. They can bring us documents, right? But they still may not tell us the full story. So all we can do is do our due diligence. You'll hear that word multiple times. We do our due diligence to say this person's telling the truth as far as I know. Remember that line that you signed that says complete and accurate as possible, right? All you can do is ask the questions, qualify it the best you can. We like to call, does it pass the smell test? Okay, does it pass the smell test? That's what we call it, right? There was one last year that I cried, kicking them out of my office because they wouldn't listen to me. I said, I'm not doing this way. They did it somewhere else where they used different addresses and all this shady stuff, and I said, I'm not doing that here. I don't do that here. Who did it for you shouldn't have done it for you. You need to leave. And I'd spent an hour plus with them. They were mad. I didn't care. I'm like, I'm not losing my everything over you because you want to get more money. That's on you. And they were mad because I wasted their time, they wasted my time, but I said, see ya. And it was hard to do because, I'd sit there for an hour with them. They were a nice couple, but they knew they shouldn't have been doing it. I called them on it. I said, they should have never let you do that, guys. You can't just use a different address. Because they weren't married yet. So they each wanted to say, like, the newborn lived over here and the other kid lived over here. They weren't together. They were clearly together, okay? I'm like, no. They admitted it. Oh, yeah, we did this every year. I'm like, you ain't doing it here. Sorry, I don't roll that way. I've seen too much fraud in the past. And it was from a former office that had since closed. So that's why I was a little more probably tender about former Liberty office that was mine. That I was like, no, sorry, we're not doing that. You can go to someone else. Don't ever be afraid to let somebody go. Okay? If it comes down to it and you really truly know, if it's questionable, you're not sure, you might want to get help. But if it's one of those I wouldn't do it.
Amber,
Yes.
the question I have is, do you know why they automatically apply to the person with the higher ADI?
Well, honestly, technically, they're not going to have to give away as much money because the lower your income, you get extra credits if you're claiming a child normally. And so that's part of it, I believe personally. I don't know if there's another reason for it, but I just think that's part of it. If you have a divorced couple and the mom made $22,000 and the dad made $40,000, well, if the person that made $40,000, the IRS isn't going to have to shell out $7,000 in child credits. It's an easy way to say it. And just technically, you would think if someone makes $40,000, they're the one that's paying more for that kiddo. But that's only if the residency is exactly the same. Okay, that's the only time that's looked at. Okay, is if residency is the same. Usually this day and age, residency is not the same unless they have joint custody. It's just not. It's not. So, yet again, there should be documents somewhere telling us that. Okay, pretty easy to decide if they've got joint custody paperwork and you know what he made and you know what I've actually had to tell somebody that. I've had to say, hey, wait a minute, and it was after the fact. I was like, wait a minute, this is joint and he made more money. You can't do, because they'll try to do that. Even the spouse wants them to get more money, and I'm like, I'm not going to break the law. Tiebreaker, we've talked about like 7 slides, guys. I think we get it. This just does not want to work with me today. We've already talked about this. Likewise, guys, if one of the parents actually raises the kiddos, right? You can't just let somebody claim your kid. Well, grandma doesn't have a dependent on her return. I'm just going to let grandma claim the kiddo. Okay, it has to be somebody that actually meets the qualifications to claim someone. Okay, back in the day, I know a lot of people would do that. Oh, the IRS will never know. But then the IRS cracked down on it, and they do know. Yes.
Okay, like my son's girlfriend, they live together, they've been together like 4 years.
Oh, you're going to give me a good chance.
And mom was never married to the dad. The dad has no legal rights to the child. But my son supports them. So can he claim them?
Are they in Oklahoma?
Nope, they're in Arkansas.
Okay. Does anybody know why I asked where they lived? Anybody
Different
just
laws.
know? Common law. So Oklahoma's a common law marriage state. And if somebody knows different, let me know.
I was told that they got rid of that. The common
We'll have to check that. Because as of last year, they hadn't, but we'll check it and see.